Hello, welcome to Agile Encounters. My name is Paweł Feliński, and together with my guest today, Pete Schibli, we will be exploring a topic of becoming an Enterprise Agile Coach. The rough flow of our discussion is on screen, so we will start with what is and what it is not an Enterprise Agile Coach, obviously. Then we'll explore the topic of capabilities of enterprise level coaches. Please mind, capabilities don't necessarily mean skills and competences only. Then we'll go through critical success factors that we think are the key success factors, but also other enterprise level coaches who reached out to support the statements. And finally, a short conversation, short but powerful, and supported with few visuals, conversations about how to become an Enterprise Agile Coach if you wish so. We will start with a picture that I accidentally found online, which is hilarious and supports the entire discussion of ours. We're going to give you literally a moment to go through this comic. I think that wouldn't be so funny, at least to me, if the very similar situation, a real situation, didn't happen to me in the past. A person who I know a little bit, and I know what kind of experience the person has. After literally 1 year of experience, became an expert in Agile field, an Enterprise Agile Coach. Pete, how often do you meet such enterprise level coaches?
Well, I guess that's the origin story of this webcast, which is noticing quite a wide range of skills and effectiveness in enterprise coaches. Some people who are brilliant and some people who are clearly still finding their feet, which sparked the question, what even is an enterprise coach, and how could I help my peers and other people be successful as enterprise agile coaches? What are the training, development, support pathways? So, and here we are. And the reason why that's so funny is it's so painfully true in many cases.
At the very beginning of our preparation to the webinar, Pete and I discovered that the more we talk about Enterprise Agile Coach, the more surprised we are about what is or what is not an enterprise level Agile Coach. We realized that those who we considered a very good, well-known, trusted Enterprise Agile Coaches, when they asked, who are you? They told us everything but not an Enterprise Agile Coach. They avoided to use the label. I wonder why. Let's see what's that. That's the definition that I guess you will not find in a book. It's a definition that we crafted again based of our experience, but also interviews that we had. So an Enterprise Agile Coach is a professional, I believe Agile professional, who helps realize Agile benefit at senior levels. And by senior levels, I mean not only the enterprise level, because very often you may think, oh, we need to work with a board of members, but I think it's whoever from the level of a broader program up. And again, Pete, back to you. Where would you position Enterprise Agile Coaches? Do we need executive Enterprise Agile Coaches, or that level is enough to cover more?
I think it's a relative scale. It might be a division or above, it might be a department or above, it might be a region or above, it might be hitting really gnarly large programs, change programs, improvement programs, and the like. But there is a distinct, distinct stratosphere in which you're playing, which does require a lot of the skills and capabilities that we'll start to explore inside of this. And just touching on the interview, as you mentioned, Pavel, part of our research was interviewing a range of enterprise agile coaches, and deliberately a mix, some real super heavyweights, top of their field globally, we ask them the questions that we're going to explore today, and we share what we learned from that today. And also some people who have just been knighted with the role. Okay, you are now an Enterprise Agile Coach. Okay, I'll figure out what that means and how to do it. And they're doing a great job of figuring out what it means and how to do it too. So it's so getting quite a nice cross section of the different kind of situations you might find yourself in.
Over a decade ago, I met Lisa Atkins and Michael White during one of their early classes on agile coaching, and the picture that became very popular these days that you can see here on screen made me thinking, all right, so there is a journey over here. It can be either team-focused agile coach, typically a Scrum Master in the Scrum framework, or an Agile Coach, Enterprise Agile Coach, but like with all models that simplify the reality, if you take this triangle and focus at it only without a broader comment from an expert, you may feel something that is actually ultimately wrong about it. What are the typical misunderstandings related to the model, Pete?
Well, let me start with what's right about it, and then I think that will help us see what the difference is, because it's quite a seductive model, right? And I think it's seductive for three reasons. Number one, there's a natural progression. Well, there's not necessarily a natural progression, but there's a kind of an obvious path you might find yourself in. I'll start as a Scrum Master or a Kanban practitioner. I'll do that for quite a while, I'll get quite good. Eventually I'll be invited to lead more and more teams, bigger things, get more capabilities, and I'll become an agile coach. And then after a while, you might think, okay, well, the next step from an agile coach is to become an enterprise coach. So there's a kind of a natural hierarchy there. And there's also a hierarchy of impact, the kind of impact you can have as a Scrum Master, 1, 2, 3, 4 teams. And then the next level up is as an agile coach, it might be times 3, times 10 of that. And then as an enterprise, it might be times 10 to 100 of that. So there's a natural progression there. And there's also a natural progression of difficulty too. Every level is way harder. So that kind of fits into this model, or you could even invert it and have it kind of going up in terms of difficulty and impact and so on. But where it starts to break down is you ask yourself the question, is every enterprise coach a good Scrum Master or a good Agile coach? And the answer is no. And I've spoken to some new Agile coach, enterprise coaches who say, actually, I'm getting quite rusty now in some of those facilitation skills. I'm not as good as I was. So, and I actually find myself needing quite different skills. So I think that's which is quite good, because it starts to point to what is actually fundamentally and uniquely different about an enterprise coach versus an agile coach, and so on. And I think we've spotted 2, maybe 3 kind of quite distinct, not distinct, 2, maybe 3 different types of capability that are different at that top level.
Mm-hmm. So the journey of ours, just for the information of the audience, was that we took the picture. We thought of capabilities, not only skills or knowledge on the enterprise level. And that conversation led us to completely different conclusion that we're gonna leave till the end of the webinar. From my perspective, I initially a decade ago thought this is like a progression, the pyramid. The pyramid was it's a triangle, not a square or rectangle, right? Which means we have many agile team facilitators, not so many agile coaches, just a few enterprise agile coaches, which is totally wrong. Few years later, I had a conversation with author of a very popular Scrum book. I think I'm not allowed to mention the name. Never mind, everybody heard about him. And I asked him bluntly, hey, what's your favorite technique to facilitate a retrospective? And he told me he's definitely enterprise level agile coach. He said, I don't know any techniques, really. I said, Mad, said, glad, speedboat, whatever. No, really. So my question was, so what do you do with people during retrospective? And he said, we just sit and talk. But the way how he facilitates the conversation, not only moderates it, how how a lot of coaching practices are involved, how he is able to keep the attention of everybody in the room to focus at the relevant topics at relevant place. This is awesome, and no technique, no excuse that is given by technique would be better better than it. Fair enough. I think we're ready to move on. 1 month ago, Tony, Riches, and myself had a conversation during Agile Encounters about the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. The long story short, the authors of the wing, inspired by a similar model that I quoted, also the X-Wing model, providing various competences of Agile coaches at all 3 levels, according to the authors. They found this model too simplistic. In the original model, we had coaching, facilitation, we had the teaching, we have mentoring, a few other aspects. But what was missing, because they saw these are skills needed in their day-to-day job, was advising, leading, something that sounds like consulting really. I thought initially these skills are typical to the enterprise level coaching. Now I think that not necessary, but that was also a trigger for our conversation. Pete and I tried to categorize all the capabilities into 2 different sections. And before we go into details, Pete, why capabilities, not just skills, as you would see on the wheel, for instance?
Good question. I think calling it a capability helps us avoid framing them as competencies or skills which you can train in isolation. If I got trained in skills, A through Z, then I'll be automatically becoming, good at this thing. Whereas I think so much of these are situational and done together. Your story of the enterprise coach who was brilliant at facilitating these presumably executive level, retrospectives. There's probably a huge number of hidden skills or capabilities which enabled him to deliver that, which we can probably only aspire to having. Like reading the room incredibly deeply, speaking their language. Where if he was trying to do mad, sad, glad as a skill, might utterly fail because they would just look at him, potentially quite strangely, for example. So calling it capability, I think, just makes it a bit more direct and accessible.
Mm-hmm. I think so. In terms of few skills and competences, let's say coaching, I think this is a skill set relevant to whatever level of agile coaching you do. However, enterprise coaches are simply better or faster or more capable in achieving successes using these skills. So capabilities sounded like a natural thing. All right, let's take a look at our model of the capabilities then. Without going into details, not yet, Pete and I realized that there are actually 2 major sets of capabilities. First one are the same capabilities, so exactly the same that you would find out looking at the work of a Scrum Master or Agile Coach as such. But there's a difference over here. We're going to explore a few examples in a second. Another set are capabilities that we think are unique to the enterprise level Agile coaching because they are either not needed, typically not necessary when you work with teams only. They become critical if you work on the program level, directorate level, enterprise level as such. Let's take a look at what's similar to Agile coaching or team coaching. Core skills, I would start with that. Basically speaking, these are the skills from the coaching wheel, from the X-Wing model or any other models. So teaching, mentoring, facilitation, and others. But there's a difference in here, Pete. Am I right?
Yeah, I'd call these same but more. Mm-hmm. And more might be faster, deeper, clearer, more applicable, and so on. So you might have 30 seconds to open up the new step for a person versus half an hour. You might need to spot the issue before it happens instead of happening after it happens.
Exactly, it comes with experience. It comes with some sort of seniority. I think one of the to illustrate it with an example, Wojciech Walczak told me once that the biggest difference he sees between enterprise level coaches and any other coaches is the time of reaction. Maybe you enter a room with a team, and maybe a Scrum Master and an Enterprise Agile Coach will see the same problem, same issue. Typically, Scrum Master will write it down into the impediments backlog or wait until the retrospective at the end of the sprint. Enterprise level coach will react immediately. That's the major difference. Core skills.
Or even see it immediately.
Absolutely.
Even notice that exists.
Speaking of seeing things, there's systems thinking mentioned here, and I wouldn't like just to leave it like that, because people may think, okay, I need to learn the discipline of systems thinking. I need to know what systems thinking is. I need to know what causal diagrams are, and so on and so on. It might be the case, but it's not only this. What on systems level you need to be aware of if you're an enterprise coach?
Well, I think, like all of these things, it's fractal. So you're just seeing a larger picture, but it's the same system thinking principles. You're looking at the system as a whole versus the sub-assemblies, the local optimization. You're trying to spot and avoid the local optimizations. You're looking for the outputs, the inputs, the environment, the pathway, the hidden drivers, the bottlenecks, the feedback loops.
I think it's not just looking, just understanding it, living with it. Like it's a natural lens, our systems lens.
Yeah.
You see, you don't connect dots. You see dots connected as such.
That's
why it's a capability, not just a piece of knowledge.
And even going a step further, harnessing it, capitalizing on that. So going to work on the bottleneck, identifying the missing input or the faulty input, connecting with the customer.
Absolutely. Another topic on our list is agile leadership. I joked. I think I was kidding. What is agile leadership? What is agile about leadership? In my opinion, we should talk about leaders of agile change or leaders in agility. However, agile leadership as such is a common phrase. Does it mean over here you need to be able to teach leaders, or you need to be a leader, agile leader?
All of the above, in my view. So being a leader yourself, providing that leadership, because we talk about leadership at every level, right? Which starts with you. Spotting where you're an impediment to other people's leadership, helping them develop their own effectiveness and confidence, and helping coach and train and inspire other leaders to see what's possible from Agile and see how they can support that through their own leadership style, and help maximize the benefits that they get. Leadership as a service, servant leadership.
I think it's also about embracing values, living with agile values and principles. I can imagine even a Scrum Master teaching a manager what does it mean that a team is self-organized, or what is expected from your role on the level of knowledge, maybe skills. But as an enterprise agile coach, you need to be really, really skilled and equipped in relevant tools in order to, from the one side, role model agile behaviors, and from the other side, help leaders harness agile values and agile principles and make decisions based on them. What about scaling?
So my views on scaling are, it can be done thoughtfully or it can be done out of the box. And my personal view is we want to do it thoughtfully from first principles, nail it before you scale it, get clear on why you're doing it. So I don't think that the how of a scaling is actually you can be an enterprise coach and scale badly, apply X model, or you could scale very thoughtfully and carefully and valuably and sustainably. So we're not in this conversation talking about whether or not you are a good person or a bad person, a good coach, a bad coach, but nevertheless you need to know how to do it. And obviously, given our values, we want to be doing it in a way that most harnessed and the agile values and principles.
As the Enterprise Agile Coach typically works at scale because supports organization, bigger part of organization, business unit, or at least a program, the person typically operates on that level. So all the principles of scaling, not only frameworks, not only practices, but also principles is what needs to be used by them on a daily basis. Are there any other capabilities, Pete, that you would put to the basket? Same but more.
I think you could go through all of them, and there'll be some situations that are applicable. But I don't think you can go far wrong from starting with the agile values, building on the agile principles, looking at what practices are applicable, wanted, and useful. Everything builds from that.
Fair enough. Our discovery during the preparation of the webinar was, however, another set of capabilities that we find unique. Maybe not unique to Enterprise Agile Coaches, but if you take the triangle from 2 slides ago, it's unique to the enterprise level, definitely. So here it goes. We listed, although the list is perhaps not completed, building trust, building rapport fast, upskilling on new needs rapidly, so it's a factor of time again, program design and management, strategy design, alignment and fulfillment, lean governance, and perhaps a few more. Let's start with building trust, because somebody would argue, hey, Scrum Master needs to build trust within the team as well. Agile coach, regular agile coach needs to build trust as well to work with their stakeholders. So what's so unique about building trust on enterprise level, Pete?
And this is something I'm still really searching for. What's the golden line that distinguishes it? Because I think you could argue this is all fractal. You need to build trust at every level, but it does feel intuitively like the level and speed and savvy that you have that you require at the enterprise level is in a league of its own. You've got to have the credibility and the ability to connect really fast with a whole range of sometimes competing and conflicting stakeholders, VPs, execs, CEOs, different department heads, and so on. One of whom might have employed you, but you need to work with the other, and in a very kind of changing landscape. Feels like almost like the linchpin that unlocks everything else.
The next one on our list, on my list, would be lean governance. I think it's not only lean governance as such, one of the key factors that few of people we interviewed before the webinar, they said you need to understand not only Agile, you need to really deeply understand the waterfall, how traditionally companies operate, because typically you will operate in this traditional environment on a really high level. So all the project management processes, the intergovernance, and as a substitute for it, or a better version, lean governance, this skills, knowledge, but also principles of it, is what you need to know in details. I think without that bit, you will not be treated as partner by many senior leaders. Because in order to build trust, you need to deliver your promises, obviously, have some successes. However, speak the same language, see the same topics without understanding. I don't want to say the enemy. We're understanding the organization we want to change. It would be really hard to build the report, especially if you want to do it fast. Do you have anything to add here, Pete?
Yeah,
this is a big topic.
it's a point you raised before about understanding, with regard to systems thinking. So the ability to understand and being able to articulate the value and the design and the intent of a lot of these other approaches, even better than the practitioners themselves, is what will give you the credibility to, be able to say, here's the good stuff we want to keep, and here's the trap we think we can avoid, or here's how we can make it even better by applying this approach, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Two more that to me are partial equivalent: strategy design, alignment, fulfillment, and program design management, depending on where you operate really as an enterprise coach. This is quite important. To make long story short, you will not exist, you will not survive a day as an enterprise coach if you focus on agile practices only. Helping organization enterprise level means also helping them deal with strategy execution, for instance, understanding what strategy is, what good strategy is, what bad strategy is, what's the difference. Same with setting goals, mission statement, vision statements. Just creation of a team charter for a board of members might be a good starting point, but that's not enough. So strategy or program design means you need to know what strategy design principles are. You have to be able to help the customer create them if they don't exist, and then implement. Again, Pete, your thoughts about this too, because I think they're very customer specific as well.
Yeah, they're entirely. And you may come across boards and exec teams who are super clear on what their strategic vision is and their strategy, and that strategy is designed to tackle and harness, the unique challenges they face, for example, and it's beautiful and elegant, they're great at implementation. But in which case they probably haven't even invited you to the table because they've taken care of themselves. More likely you're invited because they're struggling with certain things, and you'll be surprised how often those certain things can be quite basic and quite straightforward. Like, what is our goal and how are we going to achieve it, and what are our unique challenges, and how can we build alignment, and so on.
Mm-hmm. And the last one, perhaps worth a longer conversation, upskilling on the new needs rapidly. To be clear, it's not that you upskill others. It means you, as an enterprise agile coach, you need to learn. You need to be able to learn very fast. Why is it so?
Well, you might find yourself in a situation where you've got really strong domain knowledge and you're in a very stable environment where the skills that you've been practicing and developing, which have got you invited to the table, are all you need, and you're kind of really strongly in the same but more camp. And in which case you don't need it. You don't need to be able to instantly, not instantly, but like within hours or days, be able to speak credibly and effectively on a new field. But if you're not in that field, if you find yourself in a situation where you get where you stumble across or you get presented with golden opportunities that you want to be able to support, like you're talking to the CFO and she says, tell me about beyond budgeting. I've heard some good things about it. And if you've never heard about it and you don't know anything about it, then you might say, give me a day and I'll come back to you. And in that day, you need the ability to deeply understand the pros, the cons of each, how they integrate, the traps, what the possible options are, and then come back to her and say, here are some of the benefits that some people have experienced. Here are some of the traps to avoid. Here might be some starting experiments that we could explore. What do you want from it? And and start the conversation to explore that, and in that partnership, in that spirit of partnership. And that takes something, that takes just that's almost like a skill in and of itself, being able to rapidly equip yourself with the ability to have those conversations.
I totally agree. It's both a challenge, by the way, and a reward, in my opinion. A challenge because you need to do it very, very fast, and you need to be humble enough also to acknowledge you will never become an expert in the field or the industry. Typically, unless you want to become an enterprise agile coach for this new particular industry and stay in the industry for the next 30 years. Sure, but it's also rewarding. Because it helps you understand completely different words, but also requires from you the unique skills, maybe capabilities of applying what you know about agile in general in a completely new industry. That would happen to me, perhaps to yourself as well. A few years ago, for the first time, I entered the industry of the oil and gas industry. Using Agile, Scrum, Kanban, all the other frameworks over there was pretty interesting, I would say, especially at the beginning. Very easy thing. We need to help a product owner maximize value, and the value is measured in millions of barrels of oil equivalent. You're sitting on a meeting. What is the millions of barrels of oil equivalent about? Equivalent to what? A lot of new words, a lot of new terminology. That you need to be fluent in if you want to be, again, treated as a partner. But there is a reward, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things just to add into that. You've just triggered two. One is definitely applying the first principles thinking in a very kind of live empirical way. Another is not falling into the trap of thinking that you need to be the expert. And my little scenario might be, here's what I know, and here's what I've learned, and here are the top two experts in the world on this, and I've made a connection with one of them, and I'd like to organize a meeting, for example.
I think humility was one of the words repeated very often during the interviews we had with really experienced enterprise level agile coaches. On the one side, you are perceived as an expert. So by definition, a person who has all answers. On the other, you need to be aware of the fact you don't have all the answers. And you need to even be able to convince your customer that it's correct. It's absolutely good you don't have all the answers because you are the one who helped them work the answers out together with you. Very interesting stance, in my opinion. All right. I'm thinking about critical factors that you need to take into consideration if you want to become an enterprise agile coach. Pete and I asked a few of enterprise coaches what were the significant moments on their journey, what definitely made them good enterprise agile coaches, way better than what was that. One of the first, I think, very often discussed topics was, we were invited. And I thought, how you were invited to become an enterprise agile coach? And that triggered thinking, maybe it's not a promotion indeed. Well, it's not, we know it. There's something else about it. What do you know about being invited, Pete?
Yeah, I think it was a really, for me, as well as for you, just a really lovely finding of our interviews. And it certainly, I think it rang true for both of us as well, that there were definitely some things that preceded being invited to the table. And that was just being good at our craft in ever increasing and in ever different circles and fields. And incrementally, I think one finds themselves working on more and more interesting and more tricky types of programs, projects, products, initiatives. And people say, that was pretty good. Could you come and help me with X? Or what do you think of Y? Or could you help us with Z? And assuming you say yes, then you get tested, you get tried. They'll try you on something safe, and you deliver that, and then your reward for success is more work, and hence the invitation.
I was thinking about the same. However, I think it's not just the proven record of successes with teams and smaller programs. I think that's not. It's not only it. I think somebody from more senior management already sees you as a partner. It's not only your success for a lower level, but perhaps some hard to name really competences, skills of yours became visible to the senior management of a company, that they thought, okay, that person looks promising, and maybe what they do over here could be done with our program or a broader level. Am I right?
I think there's another pathway too, which is there's the kind of progressive pathway which I just described, which is effectively the same but more. And then there's what I'd call a zigzaggy path, which is you were a great line manager, or you were a great project manager or program manager, and you were very successful or brilliant. You delivered amazing results, or you had a P&L line accountability, and you take the skills and capabilities and just all that kind of battle hardened know-how from one field, and you apply it to another, and you're successful at doing the necessary mental rewiring to shift from, for example, the project management world to the product delivery world, which takes a bit of mental rewiring, and you zigzag yourself. There's a really neat story of somebody who did some research on all the United States presidents, and in theory, to become a United States president, there's a pathway. You go through the small, excuse me, the Congress, and then Senate, and this seat, and then that seat. But it turns out almost none of them did that. They zigzagged. They were a movie star like Ronald Reagan, or they were, they were successful in another field, and then another field, then another field, and they zigzagged themselves into that field, and they could adapt to find their feet in the new one. And I've seen that happen definitely with enterprise coaches, where successful in two or three other related kind of complementary fields, brought themselves over, and then just filled in the necessary gaps that they had.
I tend to agree. If we are, and I hope we all are on the same page right now, and we know that Enterprise Agile Coach is not just a super agile coach, then definitely the path is not linear, and it doesn't mean you need to zigzag from one team to another. You could, why not? But it's also changing completely the point of view. We had the interviews with few trusted Enterprise Agile coaches, and we asked them the same question, trying to gather the critical success factors in their opinion. The very first one was indeed to deliver successes at smaller scale at the beginning, to get invited. The second one, it resonates with what you just said. You need to become a competent senior leader. Some management experience is critical, at least in my opinion. It's sometimes very, very difficult even for a junior Scrum Master to work as the Scrum Master with the product owner, propose solutions, coach your product owner. Very often I see inexperienced people who had no clue about managing a product or managing whatever, and they teach managers how to manage. First of all, you can't be trusted, you're not reliable, but you're also not competent simply in it. So one of the coaches that we spoke with, he said, my piece of advice is always, if you want to become Enterprise Agile Coach, take a break for 1 or 2 years and become a product owner, but like a real product owner in Scrum, in a real Agile environment. Expose yourself to business problems, day-to-day business job. Do you know any successful Enterprise Agile coaches who were not in a management position earlier?
No, I don't think I do. No, which says something, right?
Not really. They typically did manage something. The
And Ben Moore, if you'd asked me to rate the leadership of each of those, I'd say very high.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I know also a few reverted stories. A few enterprise agile coaches eventually resigned and become COO, sorry, of a bank, director of a company, entrepreneur founder of a big software house with 300 employees right now. And these are very good places to be from cultural perspective. These people know what good looks like. Finally, the third key success factor on our list, at least, you need to deliver, obviously, and learn with a strong guide. Find a good mentor, but not only to learn, also to deliver. I think it's important at all levels, right? But at an enterprise level, if you not deliver anything, you very fast become obsolete, and nobody wants to work with you anymore. All right. Now, big moment. Pete, I think we are already. Spoiler alert: Pete created a very nice framework that has two parts. And the very first part of the framework is in front of us already. We realized that on the traditional triangle with the team facilitator, agile coach, and enterprise coach, this model is simplistic, as we know, but there's something missing. Apparently, at the top of the triangle, when you talk about enterprise agile coaching only, there are actually multiple tiers. What are these about, Pete?
Well, I think this just speaks to the cartoon picture that you showed, which is, there is a range of skills. So my question to myself was, well, how do you meaningfully distinguish between the levels? What are some useful levels? And I guess the first line that distinguishes somebody who talks about being an enterprise coach and is doing it is the empirical nature of doing the work. And I think doing the work versus talking about the work, I think, is the first kind of golden line that separates that separates the two camps in a useful way. Why useful? Because you're either doing it or you're not. You're either doing it at a small scale or you're not doing it at a small scale. And by moving yourself into that camp, then you can get into that deliver and learn cycle. Then you're on the pathway. And I think it's also a way to assess other enterprise coaches, or people who call themselves an enterprise coach. I'm an enterprise coach, and okay, great. What have you delivered? Not much. Okay, or this, in their case, fantastic. And that kind of takes us into the top two tiers. So you might find yourself in an environment where it's a stable, known environment that's really supportive, that's really good, and you might be a really good enterprise coach in that field, which is what we want. We want value. We want to maximize the amount of value that gets delivered now and into the future. So good is what we're aiming at. But in looking at the kind of enterprise coaches that we talk to and that we know, we realize there's another level even above that, which is those people who can parachute themselves into a hostile, completely new to agile, tricky environment and deliver. Learn what the opportunity is, build the appetite, deliver in small steps, build the environment, build the pathway, and deliver. And that's what I'd call a great enterprise agile coach. So I guess the value is in the use of this. If you find it useful, it's useful. If you don't find it, then it's not.
I was thinking also about a different dimension over here. I absolutely agree there is a difference between a good and a great one, but I think that in many cases, good is good enough. Good is good enough in many cases. And I also, this model, this picture, triggered also a sort of thinking for me. I think there are, we would say, good or even great enterprise agile coaches that, because of, I don't know, preference, maybe personality, although they could be effective in tough environments, they typically don't want to work with such environments. I know awesome enterprise coaches that state very bluntly, I work only with those who want to change, who already got the buy-in to agile ways of working.
And that's
I know
completely
others.
legitimate.
Yeah, absolutely. And they could work in a tough environment and they would be effective. They had a proven, they have a record of success over there as well. But their preference is, I am not here to hit the wall. I am here to work with those who want to work with me. And I know other ones, good or great, hard to say, perhaps great definitely, that absolutely prefer tough environments over other ones. They are motivated by the challenge. I never forget a conversation with an enterprise agile coach who I hired, engaged actually to one of our customer engagements a few years ago. It was a very promising program within the customer office. However, we realized very, very fast that it's tough comparing to other programs. That particular one, for various reasons, is really difficult environment. People ignore him. People are in completely different time zones. There's no buy-in. The sponsorship doesn't exist. The culture is really toxic. People are leaving and so on. It was a meeting after I think 6 weeks since he started. And I simply asked, how are you? And I received a long list of bullet points of that. And at the end I said, oh, I'm sorry I put you into that. And he said, you're sorry? Forget it, it's awesome, I love it. He simply enjoyed working in such an environment and was very effective, absolutely. So I think there's a personality thing over here as well.
It's a
Sometimes
choice.
you're great, but you prefer to work not in tough environment at all. Fair enough. All right. We got a comment from Igor. They write, I worked with a challenge lover in a heavy industry, and actually it was the challenge for both of us. Fair enough. Now we're moving to the final part of our webinar. So how to become an enterprise agile coach. I think it is clear already that it's not so easy journey, but Pete is trying to find out the best framework, showing the journey, and came up with this picture. Is that a typical path from non-enterprise agile coach to an enterprise agile coach? How should we read it?
This came about through a conversation only a few days ago, actually, with a couple of people I'd consider great agile coaches, great enterprise agile coaches, real heavyweights. It was quite a wide-ranging conversation. We were just exploring some of the unique and required capabilities, and also just the nature of the environment that you find yourself in. And this kind of picture was essentially just a mind map that I made for myself after this conversation. And to read it, you can start by saying, okay, the bottom left-hand corner is that invitation that we talked about. The prior work that you did, whether zigzagged or more the same but more, gets you into a place where you're considered making a big enough bet on that you can, as a trusted change partner, that they'll try you on something. And in that meeting, in that first engagement, you'll be connecting with the senior leaders. And one of the first things that we notice that effective enterprise coaches often do is they start with the end in mind. So they say, what is the goal here? What do you see possible? What would success look like? So now we're flipping to the top right-hand corner of this model, and just really creating the prize, seeing the both the prize and the landscape and the pathway. So you can see the orange boxes here, some of the kind of key anchor points to this. There's the invitation, there's the outcome. And we also realized in that conversation that almost all of the work that you do is going to be via and with leaders. They'll be the main kind of different communities you'll be working with. So again, it's the ability to connect with those senior leaders, coach and guide, co-lead, sometimes navigate with those leaders, and recognize you're going on a voyage of discovery. This isn't something you can plan or predict. It's not predictive. It's adaptive. So then and I think this is really where your chops as your agility chops really come into play, because I think what distinguishes this from like a change leader or a consultant is your ability to harness and apply and therefore embed as well, but really harness the agile values and principles in a way that maximizes the benefits and the ease, the speed, the clarity, the uptake, the effectiveness. So you're shaping the path, you're preempting traps, you're creating good measures so you can see success and see progress. You're helping provoke change all the way through. And when I drew this out, it was kind of like two light bulbs went off my mind. One was, this is what it is to be an enterprise coach. It's your ability to do this, right? And it also answered the second question, which was, well, how do I become better at this? And it's literally just get spot where you're weak in any of these blue boxes, or we've got strengths that you can really capitalize and play on, and develop yourself in those areas. My ability to provoke change, my ability to help others solve blockers. And yes, you could say at a fractal level, this is exactly the same kinds of things at a larger scale that a Scrum Master deals with. And I guess what's different here is it is the same thing, but at a much larger scale and a much more demanding, sometimes hostile, competitive, conflicting environment. It's much more political. So this kind of tied everything together for me anyway, with a bit of a bow. One last thing, the thing at the end, I guess this is kind of a values and an ethics thing. As an enterprise coach, as part of your engagement, early and then throughout, it's getting clear what your own exit criteria is. What does done mean for you? So you are transferring capability and not building any dependency, but hopefully being able to ride off into the sunset with a job well done at the very end.
What is very important to me, it's not a straight line over here. It's not that you open the door and this is the straight path over there. It's a journey with ups and downs, a lot of pivots, and it should be like that. Without it, you can't be successful. What I think that picture also shows is when you are invited, which is very important to me. So I guess I wouldn't name myself Enterprise Agile Coach before somebody did it for me. Really, you are invited to that world. You don't become Enterprise Agile Coach because you name yourself like that. There's no exam either. Simply somebody invites you not once but multiple times to these kind of conversations. But once you go through the door over here, I don't want to say there's no way back. There's always way back. But the domain you deal with, conversations you are invited to, are completely different to what you did on previous two levels, if I may say, working with teams only. This is a completely different world, requiring different skills, also different self-awareness, even more humility on the one side, way more speed in delivery, what you are to be delivered. And in here, you are also expected to provide solutions. That's why I said you are a bit of a consultant at that level, not because that's what Enterprise Agile Coach does. It's because this is expected from you. Am I right?
100%.
Mm-hmm. On a team level, you help people organize around the problem. You do it the same on an enterprise level, yes, but not always. Sometimes there's a problem, and you are hired literally to solve the problem, and not necessarily to provide the solution. That's very important, and we talked about it. Pete and I thought that the relevant picture, coming back to the old triangle we had, should actually look like that. We don't see Enterprise Agile Coach as a career path. Actually, if you tried being an Enterprise Agile Coach and you didn't like it or you failed, I think there's nothing wrong in that approach. I know many awesome Agile coaches who will never be Enterprise level coaches, either because they don't want or because they shouldn't. And that's okay. They are really, really awesome in what they do with teams within programs on the level that the model over here names the agile coaching. But it's not also about the career path. It's simply completely different, or not completely, but significantly different piece of capabilities, the piece of knowledge, and we find it a separated profession. Would you agree with that, Pete?
Yeah, this is one of the kind of big aha moments for me and this is from one of our interviewees who said, not a promotion, but a branch. And when we played this back to some of our other interviewees, actually, they all went, yes, that actually clarifies a bunch of stuff for them. Not a promotion, but a branch. And it's a choice. It's like you were saying, the difference between a good and a great. You want to love that field. You want to love the battle. You want to enjoy that environment, and you want to go where your heart is, where you'll thrive, where you'll make the most difference. And that's a field, and you want to choose to go into that field. And there are many, many other fields where you can make an incredible difference in the world.
Absolutely. Pete, I think it's the moment to ask those who are watching us on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, please post them and we will try to answer. While waiting for potential questions, a tiny summary from us. The key takeaways, because we covered a lot during nearly an hour of a webinar. The key takeaways are as follows. Literally what you just said. So Enterprise Agile Coach, it's a branch, not a promotion or progression. I'm thinking, is there anything to add to it? What do you think, Pete?
No, I think that nails it.
Mm-hmm. Secondly, it's fundamentally different political landscape, what you will be dealing with, and that requires different capabilities, the unique capabilities over here. We didn't talk a lot about politics in here, and I think I think politics in general is what you would be exposed to no matter at which level you work. It's a matter of a culture of organization, also size of the organization. But when you operate on the enterprise level, you will deal a lot with politics. I experienced personally several times already in different countries that Enterprise Agile coaches were hired only in order to blame somebody for a failure that was granted totally. And it is a skill to foresee this kind of traps in front of you. Would you agree?
Yeah. You're going to be dealing with sometimes dozens of major stakeholders, any one of whom could potentially sink your program, the initiative, the change. So the ability to connect, understand, harness, navigate, inspire, cajole, sideline, see the traps ahead. I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes that strata, is just the sheer number of size, complexity, and your vulnerability to that field as well.
That reminds me a learning that that was tough for me a few years ago already. What we teach as agile coaches, among others, is to focus, to limit work in progress. And when you become the enterprise level agile coach, you start to juggle. There are so many threads. It's not that you focus on one team, but on many stakeholders. Each is different, requires different approach, different concepts. So being aware of that and being able to implement what you teach for your own sake is also required the skill. Not sure if it happens to you. Maybe it's my skill. There's something else about politics as well, perhaps worth mentioning, applicable to all the levels, I believe, but quite essential and enterprise one. You need to choose carefully which battles to fight. As a person with the skill of systems thinking, understanding the big picture, you see immediately, I hope, many problems, many issues, many opportunities in many places. You can't fix all of them to high work in progress, but you may also make many people angry at once. The ability of picking up the one best battle to fight for initially is very important to get the success, and it's very tricky because it's not always the best battle or the one that gives you most value. It might be a quick win that you need in order to prove those stakeholders that are not yet convinced that actually what you do makes sense, and they will give you even more
to solve a pain or to build goodwill or trust.
Perhaps dealing with politics might be another topic for a webinar. I'm not sure if I'm fully competent to discuss it, but we have a guest for that.
I know I'm not.
Fair enough. So we won't meet about and talk about it. Finally, a revelation of ours: the invitational pathway. You are invited to the enterprise world because you did demonstrate successes at different, at a smaller stage and ever larger challenges, as simple as that. We have a few questions, Pete. I think it's about time to focus at them. The first one: what are the good certifications for Enterprise Agile Coaches? I have my answer. Let's start with you, Pete.
I think most going to get the same as yours, which is, well, actually, my tongue-in-cheek answer is none, but I think actually being a bit more thoughtful. If you have a look at your own situation, the landscape that you're dealing with, and you kind of overlay that framework that we just shared with you, you might spot particular areas that you, Igor, are really interested in strengthening yourself in. So I would take those and say, okay, I want to get really good at X, and that may not be an Agile certification, and it may not even be a certification. It might be a mentor or a guide or a practice area or and so on. So I'd look beyond the formal qualification and zero in on what are those capabilities that you think would make you feel and be more confident and effective in dealing with those particular challenges that you either are facing or suspect you'll face when you move into that arena.
So my thoughts are really similar. First of all, I don't know if there's any certification directly for Enterprise Agile Coach. We have IC Agile, International Consortium for Agile, with an ICP EAC training and badge eventually. But this is just a training session, and if you met the requirements that all students need to meet, you receive the badge. I would never say you are qualified Enterprise Agile Coach over here. There is a bigger pathway, longer pathway, 3-level pathway, literally touching the team facilitation bit, Agile coaching bit, and enterprise coaching bit, 3 training sessions, but also some extra requirements. If you meet all of them, you receive a bigger badge, so there's a mentoring involved. However, when I recall my conversations with Enterprise Agile Coaches who I really trust, I can't recall if any of them at all had the certificate. I guess not.
No, there isn't any.
When we look at bodies like Scrum.org, Scrum Alliance, Kanban University, they have very senior programs, expert level programs. even the programs touching leadership, but I can't say honestly that if you complete that program, this is certification of Enterprise Agile Coaching level. It's like with board of members, CEO. Is there a certification for CEOs? Yes, there is, because on Instagram a few weeks ago I received an advertisement, become a certified CEO, and I thought, what the heck? Apparently there's an online class. If you take it, you're a CEO or CFO. But no, I think it's way beyond typical qualifications understood as knowledge and skills only. It's about capabilities. A longer journey is needed there for our picture.
So in other words, if I'm looking for a certification pathway, Paweł, I need to do a really good assessment of my own areas where I'm lacking confidence for good reason, and design and form my own menagerie of guides, supporters, mentors, networks, training, and kind of I've got to build my own certification, right? And certification that's going to be good for me will be different from the certification I use in inverted commas from yourself, and from Igor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yet another question. Interesting again. How could you differentiate agile transformation from enterprise coaching? Let's take a look at this bit first. What are your thoughts, Pete?
I guess so. I think OKRs you can split off quite quickly. It's a tool, it's an approach. It's really powerful. I use them myself. It's I guess OKR coaching could form part of your tool set.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between agile transformation and enterprise coaching? I don't know.
I do. I can share my thought. It's a matter of terminology a bit, but agile transformation, it's no matter what we feel about it, it's a project, it's an initiative, it's a program that has a vision. There is a current state of organization, could be the entire company, could be smaller bit of organization, and the end desired state of organization that is agile. It's run as a project, it's founded as a project, and it's the outcome hopefully is that we are better, faster, more value-driven or customer-oriented organization. Enterprise coaching would be a multidisciplinary profession, I'd say, that supports agile transformation at larger scale, at enterprise level. But I can imagine an organization without any agile transformation ongoing that requires enterprise agile coaching, either because they want to be better and better, or because they don't have any transformation initiative planned or in progress. They simply want step-by-step, evolutionary, or maybe revolutionary in a couple of places, be better and better in what they do and how they do it.
It occurs to me that somewhere like Tesla, who reached such an incredible level of maturity, they would never have an agile transformation program. It's so baked into every molecule of their bodies. They may not even have enterprise coaches, but they may not need. So companies beyond a certain level of maturity may not require a programmatic support as a vehicle to kind of move them along.
Yeah,
it may just be what we do.
I do agree. Of course, there are situations also that enterprise coaching is ad hoc. Literally, my assignment this week, a company that is, in my opinion, pretty agile, pretty good at agility. They needed a bit of coaching, enterprise level coaching, not consulting, to become a little bit better. Few tools. Few sessions facilitated, everything wrapped up, and they are left, and they can carry on with that on their own. While transformation is typically a broader program founded with sponsorship, metrics hopefully around it, and a clear or not fully clear destination. The last question over here, and how about OKR coaching? That's very interesting, because I had my journey recently. Objectives and key results framework is a goal-setting framework that I've been using for years. Not always applicable in my opinion. Not everywhere should be applied, but ultimately very, very good one. And I heard about the profession of OKR coaches or consultants. And these people are hired by companies full-time. And I thought, what do they do? It's not that the framework looks simple. It's not simple. It's not simple to master it, to roll it out. It's in some organizations it's very difficult. But I thought to have a full-time equivalent, an FTE, just doing it, maybe it's an exaggeration. But despite that, the more I go into these tough environments that you mentioned when we talk about great enterprise agile coaches, the more I realized that sometimes if you want to roll out OKR framework properly, a bigger cultural shift is needed. So perhaps there is coaching around it. For me, OKR coaching will be somehow embedded in enterprise coaching, because if you're a coach, agile coach on that level, enterprise level, it's not that you know only agile frameworks. It is a must-have to know waterfall and non-waterfall frameworks. OKR for me is one of the tools that you would use on a daily basis. Pete, over to you.
I guess what occurs to me out of this is that our earlier truncated pyramid model is a bit incomplete. So being an enterprise coach is one branch. Maybe being an OKR coach with all of the work that requires, because OKR is done well. It's a cultural change. It's an implementation change, getting the wiring in, the behaviors. It's a whole thing all by itself, transformative. So that's another branch. Maybe bringing design thinking to a company is another branch. So there are multiple branches that nest around and above, a core agile coach.
Absolutely. All right. No further questions. I think we are about to finish. Let me remind just the key takeaways. In our opinion, valid. Maybe your takeaways are different. And if someone is interested in how enterprise agile coaching helps or helped a company achieve their goals, I'd like to invite you. I did it already a month ago to explore an agile transformation in the insurance industry, a broader case study available on our website. From our side, that would be all. Pete, as always, it was a huge pleasure to have you here and to work with you. Thank you very much, and see you during another Agile encounter in the future. Take care.
Thank you very much, Paweł. It'll be a pleasure.